In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the blend door actuator on this Ford F-250. It's actually located in the dash, but you don't have to remove the whole dash. We do have to take the center console off, glove box, and passenger side airbag to get to it. So let's get started. Use an 8mm wrench or socket, and on the thread, the mounting nut that clamps down the negative battery terminal. Once you get it off a little bit, you should be able to spin it, pull it straight up and off of the terminal. Once you do that, inspect it for corrosion. This one has a little bit, but not too much. If it's severe, you might want to consider cleaning it and or replacing it. Set it aside on the side of the battery here so it can't jump back and make connection while we're working. After you've disconnected your battery, make sure you wait a while so that the airbag module can discharge. We waited about 30 minutes and now we're ready to go. Let's pop this panel out on the bottom. Use a plastic trim tool to get it out. If you have to use a metal screwdriver, just be very careful not to damage it. There we go. Do the same on the other side. Remove the panel. If yours has this plug here, unplug it so we can get this out of the way. And then this side does have a 7mm screw for me. Right in the corner. Remove it. Set it aside safely. Now grab this panel, pull it straight out from the top as well. There we go. You can unplug everything or just let this hang over here. You don't need to remove this panel, we just needed access over here. Remove the 4 screws that hold on the radio. Now this is an aftermarket radio for me, so I have 4 Phillips heads. Whatever you have, remove them. With those off, pull the head unit straight out. Once again with this, you can unplug it or just let it hang over here. Now open up the glove box, remove whatever's in it, and then if you pull on the right-hand side of it and pull it down, this tab will clear the edge of it. Now you can open it fully. There are 4 7mm screws on this, 2 on each side and 2 in the middle. Now underneath you'll see 4 10mm headed bolts. Remove all 4 so we can get the airbag out. Pull the airbag out, careful, and there it is. Now there is an electrical connector, so you can see it. I'm going to flip it over right here, and to unhook this, we're going to have to pry out. You can use that to pry it out while squishing on the tabs. There it is. Once it's disconnected, always store an airbag facing up, just in case. Open up the passenger side vent and pull it out. Be careful not to break these vent movers. You can push it out from behind if needed. There we go. Now you're going to want to sneak a 7mm wrench in there, or a socket if you can fit it, and unthread this bolt that secures the ducting onto the dash support. It's a fairly long bolt or screw, so it's going to take a while, but just go slow. Try not to lose your tool back there. Once you unthread it enough with a tool, you should be able to get it by hand. Try not to drop it behind the dash. There it is. Remove that. Now with the screw removed from the right-hand side, if you follow the vent, the duct, all the way into where the radio would be, and you look through this opening, you'll see another one of these 7mm headed screws that we also have to remove to finally remove this duct. In this case, you can stick a ratchet back here, and it should come off a lot easier than with a wrench. Still tight, but at least you have a little bit more space to work with. Now with the top duct unbolted, we're going to have to separate it from this little piece here and push the top up, get this out through here. The actuator we're after is right behind it. Now all of these do bend. They are flexible, so don't be afraid to squish them and push on them. Obviously don't break anything, but they are quite flexible. Here's our actuator. There's an electrical connector right at the back of it, and we're gonna have to push the red locking tab out of the way, pull it back. I'm pulling with a pick, and then in the center you'll see a black tab. Press on that and remove the electrical connector from the actuator. Then there are two 8mm bolts holding this onto the heater box, so let's remove both of those, which you can do by going in through the vent with an extension and an 8mm socket. As you remove these screws, try not to lose them in the dash. If you have a magnet, that should help you remove them safely. With those out and it unplugged, we'll be able to lift the actuator right up and off. Give it a wiggle, sometimes it gets stuck. And there it is. Here's your actuator. So here are the two blend door actuators, the old one and the new one. What I want to point out is the arrow. Both have it. And this one is not lined up. You'll notice that there's a little arrow on the end of the shaft, that spline that goes into the blend door. This one is lined up. You'll see that there's one spline missing right where that arrow is. And this is what the factory wants from the new blend door actuator, which is fine, except that our old one isn't quite lined up yet, because you would have to, before you even start the procedure, set the temperature so that this can change and be lined up perfectly. And a lot of times that's hard to do. So here's a trick that I want to share that will allow you to install this one without having to preset the temperature. So have a little screwdriver or pry bar that you can stick in here very gently in the splines right there, and you can turn the blend door. Now you want to turn it just the right amount, of course, so you want it to line up. You'll notice that this right here has a spline missing and all around it is spline. So that's what you're going for. However, another benefit of doing this is when you turn that blend door by hand, if you notice that it gets stuck at all or doesn't turn all the way, well, your blend door actuator might have gone bad because you actually have a problem inside the heater box, not with the actuator itself. So this is just a tip for you. It actually does benefit to do this by hand. Having said that, now that I believe that it is pretty much lined up, ready to go, I'm going to take the new blend door actuator and slide it down into position, of course trying to line up the splines on that shaft so it can slide down in. Right over here, as well as here and here, are the areas that it has to line up. This tab right here is just a locator, so it just has a pin. There isn't an actual bolt. The other two do have the screws that go through them. Spin this a little bit and There it is. That's perfectly positioned. Splines are lined up, bolts line up, locator tab lines up. The other locator tab that's right here went in, so that's great. So here's a trick to get these bolts in. You can put a little piece of a paper towel between the bolt and your socket. That should help you slide it into its hole. And I know this actuator is lined up completely, so I'm just going to tighten it up. I normally wouldn't tighten up one bolt at a time completely, but in this case, I would rather it be in place since it has two different locator tabs and I know for sure it's lined up. When you tighten this, it's going into plastic, so as soon as it bottoms out, just give it an 1/8 of a turn at most. That's going to be plenty tight. Remove that paper towel if you used it. You don't want to strip anything out by over tightening it. Now let's get the other side in. All right, that's snugged up as well. Let's connect the electrical connector now. Oh, and there's the connector that just slid in. Make sure that clicks. Once it clicks, you'll be able to lock it in place. My red locking tab just broke. Sometimes that happens. They get brittle over time, but just make sure that this is fully plugged in, which it is. Perfect. Now you can either put this back together and then test it at the end, or put your battery back on and turn the ignition to the on position. Make sure the actuator does what it's supposed to do. Now, before you assemble anything, just know that if you turn the ignition on with the airbag disconnected, it might throw an airbag light, which can be reset, but I find that worth it because you wouldn't have to dig back into this point if something was wrong, and I would rather know now than after it's put back together. Now let's get the ducting back in place. That's seated. Bring the top duct back down. Get that locked in. Everything is in position, perfect. So let's install the 2 screws that hold the top duct in place. It's definitely a tricky one. All right, tighten this up. Snug. I'll give it a little extra. I don't want to over tighten this and break anything. That's plenty tight right there. Let's put the screw in on the other side. Now reach in from the other side and stick in the other screw that folds down this duct. It's going to be a little hard to reach, unfortunately, and see, but once you get it started by hand, at least you have quite a bit more space in here. Thread it on and bottom it out. That's snugged up. Now let's reinstall the vent. When you do this, you'll have a line at the top and then a line on the other side, 180 degrees off of the other one. It doesn't matter which one goes top or bottom. What matters though is that you line it up with these cutouts here on the dash. There's one here and one at the bottom. If you don't put it in that way, it might go in, but it's not going to be in correctly. There we go. Just press it on. It should go in smoothly. Everything should operate. Once again, if you don't line it up right, you might be able to get it in, but it's basically just going to be jammed in there the wrong way. Let's plug in the airbag now. Careful with this connector. There we go. Flip it over carefully and put it inside the dash. Line up this cover. You can snap that into place, and now of course we have to bolt it on from underneath. Let's reinstall the 4 bolts that go in from the bottom that secure the airbag. They were the silver 10mm headed bolts. Don't confuse them for the other bolts that we've taken out so far. Once you start all 4 in, we'll have to snug them up, and you want to make sure that these start in smoothly. They don't cross thread or anything. £80 is the torque for all 4 of these bolts. Torque them if you can. If not, do your best to make them nice and tight. There we go. Let's put in the 4 7mm screws that hold on the airbag cover on the dash. Snug these up. Don't make them too tight. You don't want to strip out the threads. Install your belongings in the glove compartment. Pull on the side here so the stopper can clear the dash and close it up. Let's put the head unit back in. Stick all the wires back in here. Of course, I have an aftermarket head unit, so it might look a little bit different, but yours should slide in nice and smooth in here, just like so. I had 4 Phillips head screws holding this onto the dash, so reinstall all 4 of those. And when you tighten it, don't tighten them too much. As you can see, someone has already done that, and the tabs are a little squished. If they break, this won't stay securely mounted, so just be careful. If you're using a power tool, especially be careful. Perfect. All right, let's reinstall this panel. There's a lot of wires back here, and you want to make sure, oops, this popped out. That's all right, we'll leave that out. It's actually better. You want to make sure you don't pinch at any of these wires, route them to where they will slide into the dash instead of getting squished. And just make sure everything fits as it should. Plug out here. Okay, finally. You just have to move things around until they line up. Press this all on. That's perfectly mounted. It's nice and flush. Reinstall this. If it popped out, my plug is kind of broken, so I'll just leave that like that. Install the screws that hold on this panel. There's one on each side. Once you do that, these covers go on. Now for me, the truck has the wiring for the option that would be here, but there is nothing here, so I'm just going to put the cover back on. And do the same on the other side. Put that screw in. Once it's in, reconnect your plug for the power outlet. Make sure that clicks and line up the panel. Push that back on. Reconnect the negative battery terminal. You might see a little spark and hear some clicking. That's normal as the battery gets reconnected. And I'm going to snug this up. Now, once you tighten it and you get to basically the snug point, try spinning it. If you can still spin it like this, it is not tight enough. So continue tightening it, but if you over tighten it, you'll actually stretch the terminal. As you can see right now, I can't spin it anymore. So even though I could keep tightening it, I'm going to stop. This is connected properly. And there you have it, job is done.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.